أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وصلى الله تعالى على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. This is your humble and respectable orator Muhammad Israel, and we're picking up with the legendary military ideology of the Prophet Muhammad alayhi salawatullahi ta'ala alayhi. This is the era of Sayyidina Ali ibn Abi Talib radiyallahu anhu, and subsequent to completing the legendary military empire, governance, legacy, and career of the Prophet Muhammad alayhi salawatullahi ta'ala alayhi, encompassing the Madanite period, the era of Sayyidina Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, Umar ibn al-Khattab, and Uthman ibn Affan radiyallahu anhum. Now we're picking up from page number 233. This is warning against some books which distort the history of the companions of the Prophet Muhammad alayhi salawatullahi ta'ala alayhi. 3.7.1 Al-Imama wa Siyasa, which is attributed to Ibn Qutaybah. One of the books that distort the history of early al-Islam is Al-Umama wa Siyasa, which is attributed to Ibn Qutayba, Dr. Abdullah Usaylan. In this book, Al-Imama wa Siyasa fi Mizan at-Tahqiq al-Ilmi, list a number of points providing that this book attributed to Imam Ibn Qutaybah is false and it is fabrication. The evidence to the effect include the following. None of those who wrote biographies on Ibn Qutaybah said that he wrote a book on history called Imama wa Siyasa, and we do not know of any book of history that he wrote except for a book called Al-Ma'arif. Next is reading. Through the book gives one the impression that Ibn Qutaybah lived in Damascus and the Maghrib. In fact, he never left Baghdad except to go to Ad-Daynur. Next, the methodology and style used by the author of Al-Imama wa Siyasa is completely different from the methodology and style of Ibn Qutaybah as seen in those of his books that still exist. Ibn Qutaybah wrote lengthy introductions to his books explaining his methodology and his aim in writing the book. In contrast, the author of Al-Imama wa Siyasa writes a very short introduction that is no more than 3 lines. In addition, there are differences in style. We do not see this methodology in the books of Ibn Qutaybah. We also want to highlight the author of Al-Imama wa Siyasa narrates from Ibn Abi Layla in a way that gives the impression that he met him. But, in other words, however, this Ibn Abi Layla is Muhammad ibn Abdurrahman ibn Abi Layla al-Faqir, the judge of Kufa, who died in 148 years after the Hijriya. It is well known that Ibn Qutaybah was not born until 213 after the Hijriya, 65 years after the death of Ibn Abi Layla. Next is the narrations or the narrators and sheikhs from whom Ibn Qutaybah usually narrates in his books are not mentioned anywhere in this book. Next is a large segment of his reports are narrated using phrases that indicate a problem with the reports. It often says, open quote, they mention from some of the Egyptians, end quote. They mentioned from Muhammad ibn Sulaiman, from some of the sheikhs of the people of Egypt, end quote. Some of the sheikhs of the Maghrib told us. This is another quotation. Open quote, they mentioned from some of the sheikhs, end quote. Such phrases are far removed from the usual style of phraseology of Ibn Qutayba and are not used in any of his books. Next is the author of Al-Imama wa Siyasa, narrates from two of the senior scholars in Egypt, but Ibn Qutayba never went to Egypt and never learned from these two scholars. Ibn Qutayba is held in high esteem by the scholars who regard him as one of Ahl Sunnah, trustworthy in his knowledge and religious commitment. As Salafi said, Ibn Qutayba was one of the trustworthy and one of the Ahl Sunnah, end quote. Ibn Hazm said concerning him, open quote, he was trustworthy in his knowledge and religious commitment, end quote. Al-Khatib al-Baghdadi said likewise. Ibn Taymiyyah said concerning him, open quote, Ibn Qutayba is one of the followers of Ahmad and Ishaq and one of the supporters of the Sunni madhab, end quote. If a man is held in such high esteem by the authentic scholars, does it make sense for him to be the author of a book like Al-Imama wa Siyasa, which distorts history and attribute to the companions which is not true? Dr. Ali Nufai Al-Alyani said in his book Aqidah Al-Imam Al-Qutayba concerning Al-Imam wa Siyasa, open quote, after a critical reading of this book, Al-Imam wa Siyasa, in my view, is the most likely, or it is most likely that the author of Al-Imam wa Siyasa was an evil Rafidi who wanted to attribute this book to Ibn Qutayba because his books are numerous and because he was well known among the people for supporting Ahl al-Hadith, meaning the people of Ahadith. He may have been one of the Rafidis of the Maghrib, as Ibn Qutayba enjoyed a good reputation in the Maghrib. What makes it likely that the author of Al-Imama wa Siyasa, was a Rafidi is the following. The author of Al-Imama wa Siyasa claims that Ali ibn Abi Talib radiallahu anhu said to the Muhajirin, I urge you by Allah Jalla Jalaluhu, O Muhajirin, not to take the authority of Muhammad among the Arabs out of his house and home to yours, and not to deprive his family of their rights. For by Allah Jalla Jalaluhu, O Muhajirin, we are more entitled to that because we are Ahlul Bayt, meaning members of the Prophet ﷺ's household, and are more entitled to this than you. By Allah Jalla Jalaluhu, this is our right. Do not follow whims and desires, lest you go astray from the path of Allah Jalla Jalaluhu. No one believes that the Khalifa is the hereditary right of Ahlul Bay'ah except the Shia. A second bulletin, the author of Al-Imama wa Siyasa harshly criticizes the companions of the Messenger salawatullahi ta'ala alayhi. He depicts Ibn Umar radiallahu anhu as a coward and Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas as jealous. He says that Muhammad ibn Maslama got angry with Ali ibn Abi Talib because he killed the Jew Marhaba in Khaybar, and that Aisha ordered that Uthman be killed. Criticism of the companions is one of the most well-known characteristics of the Rafidi. The Kharijites do something similar, but they do not criticize the majority of the companions. The Rafidis versus the Kharijites, how they insult or how they belittle the statements that they may make pertaining to Sahabas matters. Moving along now to page number 236. The author of Al-Imama wa Siyasa says that Al-Mukhtar ibn Ubaid was killed by Mus'ab ibn Az-Zubayr because he called people to rally behind the household of the Messenger salawatullahi alayhi, but he neglects to mention the myths introduced by Al-Mukhtar or his claim of receiving revelation. The Rafidis are the ones who love Al-Mukhtar ibn Abi Ubaid because he took revenge on the murderers of Al-Hussein. It should also be noted that Ibn Qutayba, may Allah Jalla Jalaluhu have mercy on him, mentioned Al-Mukhtar among those who rebelled against the legitimate authority, and he said that Mukhtar used to claim that Jibreel alayhi salatu wassalamu alayka came down to him. The author of Al-Imama wa Siyasa wrote only about 25 pages concerning the Khilafat of the three Caliphs, Abu Bakr, Umar, and Uthman, whereas he wrote 200 pages about the fitna that occurred among the companions of the Messenger of Allah. In other words, he reduced the greatest period of history to a few pages, but wrote pages upon pages of false history, of which nothing is proven except a little. This is one of the known attributes of the Rafidis. We seek refuge with Allah Jalla Jalaluhu from misguidance and betrayal. Sayyid Mahmoud Shukri Al-Alusi says in Mukhtasar Al-Fitna Al-Ithnai Ashariya, part of their meaning the Rafidis' crafty tricks is that they look at the names of scholars who are respected by Ahlul Sunnah, and whenever they find one who has the same name as one of their own scholars, they attribute the reports of that Shia scholar to him, to the Sunni scholar. Those Sunnis who are unaware of this will think that this is one of their Sunni Imams and will accept his words and rely on his reports. For example, As-Sudis is the name of two men, one of whom is As-Sudi the elder and the other is As-Sudi the younger. The elder As-Sudi is one of the trustworthy Sunni scholars, whereas the younger is one of the fabricators and liars and is an extreme Rafidi. Abdullah ibn Qutayba is an extreme Rafidi, whereas Abdullah ibn Muslim ibn Qutayba is a trustworthy Sunni scholar who wrote a book called Al-Ma'arif. That Rafidi wrote a book which he has called Al-Ma'arif with the aim of misleading people. This is what makes it likely that the book of Al-Imama wa Siyasa was written by the Rafidi Ibn Qutayba and not by the trustworthy Sunni Ibn Qutayba. People got confused by the similarity of names, and Allah Jalla Jalaluhu knows best. Najd al-Balagh Nahjul Balagh, excuse me, yes, we are somewhat familiar. One of the books that played a role in distorting the history of the companions of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wasallam is the book called Nahjul Balagh. Very important book, very popular book also. This book is faulty in terms of both its chains of narration and its text. It was compiled 3.5 centuries after Ali ibn Abi Talib radiallahu anhu passed, without any chain of narration. The Shia attributed Nahjul Balagha to Al-Sharif Al-Raydiyya, who was not accepted by the Hadith scholars even when he gave a chain of narrators in cases where the reports support his innovations. So how about if no chain of narration is given at all, as it is or as is the case in Nahjul Balagha? As for the one whom the scholars accuse of lying, this is his brother Ali. The scholars discussed him and said, Ibn Khalil Khan said in Tarjamat al-Sharif al-Murtadi, open quote, the scholars differed concerning the book Nahjul Balagha, which is a compilation of the words of Imam Ali radiallahu anhu, as to whether it was compiled by Ali or his brother Ar-Raidi. It was said that these were not the words of Ali, rather, radiallahu anhu, rather that the one who compiled it and attributed to him was the one who fabricated it. And Allah Jalla Jalaluhu knows best. Ad-Dahabi said, open quote, the one who studies Nahjul Balagh will be certain that it is falsely attributed to Amirul Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib radiallahu ta'ala anhu. It contains blatant insults and criticism of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anhu and Sayyidina Umar ibn al-Khattab. May Allah Jalla Jalaluhu be pleased with both of them, as well as contradictions, and it is written in a weak and valid style such that anyone who knows anything about the Qurayshi companions and those who came after them and their way of thinking will be certain that the most of it is false. That's Nahjul Balagha. Ibn Taymiyyah said the scholars know that the most of the speeches in this book are fabricated and falsely attributed to Ali ibn Abi Talib radiallahu anhu. Hence, we do not find most of it in earlier books, and it has no known chain of transmission. Ibn Hajar accuses Al-Sharif Al-Murtadi of fabricating it and says, open quote, the one who studies it will be certain that this is falsely attributed to Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib radiallahu anhu, and most of it is false, end quote. Based on the above comments and others, a number of researchers discussed this topic and said that this book cannot be soundly attributed to Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib radiallahu ta'ala anhu. We may note some of the most important reasons why the early and modern scholars doubted the attribution of Nahjul Balagha to Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib radiallahu anhu. Inshallah, we will end this one here on page number 238. Subhanakallahumma bihamdik. وتبارك اسم ربك وتعالى جدك ولا إله غيرك ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين الحمد لله رب العالمين.